called Scene, um, about helping youth in and addressing mental health issues in youth and teens. Today, we have with us Catherine Gray, who is from the Anne Arundel County Health Department. She has a lovely presentation she's going to give to us. We are recording just the presentation part tonight so that we can put it up for folks who weren't able to join us. And then when we get to the question and answer part at the end, we will turn off the recording so you guys can feel free to ask whatever it is that you would like to ask. And with that, turn it over.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that lovely introduction. As Jennifer said, I'm Catherine Gray. I am the Deputy Director and Clinical Director at the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency. And I'll just give you a 2-second about our agency just to put it in some context. So we operate in the county. There's one of us in every county. We are the planners and monitors for the public behavioral health system. Public behavioral health means individuals who are in Medicaid or Medicare or uninsured or underinsured. And then our big program actually in the county is we operate our crisis response system. Our crisis response system is 24/7, 365. Well, I actually have a slide at the end where you can go for help on that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If you have questions throughout the presentation, by all means, please stop me and ask. I actually won't be able to see you, so don't wave hands because I can't see it. Just yell or talk very gently either. Okay. So here we go. Okay. So this presentation is really designed around resilience for teens. We do several of these for 0 to 5s, for preteens, teens, adults, and now we do one actually for older adults. So let's get started. So what is resilience? So the Behavioral Health Administration, they have, with our help, we actually sit on the Resilience Committee for the state, have given resilience a definition. Resilience is an innate capacity to rebound from adversity and change through a process of positive adaptation. In youth, resilience is a fluid, dynamic process that is influenced over time by life events, temperament, insight, skill set, and the primary ability of caregivers and the social environment to nurture and provide them with a sense of safety, competency, and secure attachments. That is quite a mouthful. So what this is ultimately saying is resilience is our innate ability to adapt to any kind of adversity, major adversities, traumas, but in children, we have an additional support system that can help us be resilient. And that's our caregivers. That's our social environment. If those are all things that are nurturing, we actually can help children be resilient. So we've sort of developed, this is about over 15 years, these core concepts of resilience. And they're basically strengthening assets and skills in children, families, individuals, organizations, and communities. And we have 6 of them. We have identified them as a sense of competency, caring and respect for self and others, problem solving and coping skills, optimism and hope for the future, that ability to reframe stress, and having a sense of meaning and purpose in life. So when we talk about things that allow one to be resilient, and especially in teens, we want our teens and younger children in particular to be able to experience some kind of adversity while they're young, while they're living at home, while they have this really healthy support system around them. We don't really want our kids going off into the great world after they're graduated high school, working, college, moving out on their own. we don't want them to experience adversity for the first time there, because their support system is a lot smaller by then. Typically when they're not living at home, mom and dad aren't around the corner to get the supports that they need. So we really want to develop these skills while they're young, that sense of competency, that ability for kiddos to persevere, to be able to try things, fail, try again, learn from their mistakes. That caring and respect for others is literally that. Do you have that ability to show care, to provide care for others, whether it's friends, siblings, parents, but also that respect for yourself? Do you know when to say no? Can you set healthy boundaries? Those are all really, really good things. The problem solving and coping skills. So problem solving with teenagers is a very interesting concept. The way they problem solve is usually by the time they're teenagers. If you think of families in concentric circles, when they're younger, mom and dad or whoever their caretaker is that primary provider in that concentric circle. But as they become teenagers, the parents kind of move out a little bit, and the social influences take more of a priority. So they'll start to sort of, for lack of a better word, crowdsource problem solving. We really encourage healthy relationships with parents, even through the teen years, as difficult as they are. I've raised a teenager. It's definitely a challenge, but if they know you are always there for them, regardless of what mistakes they make, that you will help them, guide them through those mistakes. What did they learn from it? Those are all things that are going to help them land on their feet. That hope and optimism for the future, literally what it sounds like. Can they start thinking futuristically? Can they think about what I want to do in 5 years, 10 years, even 15 or 20 years? Do you want a family? Do you want a career? Do you want to travel the world? What are things that are making you happy? I will say this generation is much better at really thinking about what are the things in their future that they think will make them happy. My generation, nothing. I'm a Gen Xer. Nothing made us happy. We raised ourselves and we just, got down to it, and that was the end of that. We have tried to teach our kids, find something that makes you happy in life and make that your path. That ability to reframe stress. Again, just what it sounds like. When you're reframing stress, I try to help families understand that there's always a silver lining to everything. And there are little exercises you can do. I do gratitude exercises at night. I kind of think about what in my day I am grateful for. And it can be little things like today, we didn't run out of paper at our training. I was pretty sure we were going to, and I didn't have a backup plan, but I was very grateful that we actually didn't. They had extra, oversized Post-it notes, which was perfect. But that's something that stressed me out. And, unfortunately, I just didn't plan for it. That was my fault. But I was able to look at that and say, well, what am I going to do if this doesn't happen? How do I reframe that? There's nothing I can do about it now. It's too late. So I came up with some other little activities we could do. And then that sense of meaning and purpose. So this one, when we think of resilience is not linear. You develop different resilience skills throughout your life. And what we're finding is sort of late teens, early 20s are really focusing on this meaning and purpose. What is it that they are here to do? So this can be anything from, do you have a sense of spirituality? It doesn't have to be religion, but is there something outside of yourself that gives you meaning and purpose? Okay. So why do we need to be resilient? Well, we all have stress. Stress is not my favorite thing. I don't think it's most people's favorite thing. But there are three primary types of stress, and not all stress is bad. Eustress or positive stress is actually really healthy. It's very normal. So if you think of healthy stress, if you think of like a bell curve, right as you're getting to the top of that bell curve is where your optimal functioning is. You're not going into overload. You're not going into meltdown mode. You're feeling the pressure, but not too much pressure. It forces you to focus. It forces you to complete the task. So positive stress, these are short, very, very short term. It's brief periods of stress. Getting ready to take a test, writing a paper. If you're somebody who likes to procrastinate, you feel a lot of the stress because you wait till the last minute to do it, but it's where you function best. And that's not a bad thing. Maybe even going to a new school, that kind of butterflies in your tummy, those first, getting up in the morning, having to take a bus or having to walk to school, you don't know anyone. Those can all be positive stresses that don't cause any dysfunction. Then we have tolerable stress or distress. So the key with this is it is actually very, very time limited. And the important factor is the individual, the child feeling this has a supportive relationship. Now that supportive relationship doesn't necessarily have to be a parent. When we think of childhood adversity, what we know is if you have one positive person in your life, one positive connection, you are more likely to persevere, to do well with that stress, because you have somebody in your corner kind of rooting for you. So the emotional recovery for tolerable stress can actually be pretty quick, but again, it's with that supportive relationship. So the stress that is not so good is toxic stress. And this is really that prolonged stress, physical abuse, emotional abuse, dealing or being raised by a caregiver or parent with serious mental health issues or substance use issues who are not receiving treatment. And the key with this is those are youngsters that don't have any supportive relationships. They don't have anyone to turn to. And unfortunately with this in young children, this actually affects brain development. So this is one we need to be really, really cognizant of. Okay. So what does stress do to the body? So stress can do a couple of things. Again, not all stress is bad. When we are, in that positive stress, we have some adrenaline going, it feels pretty good, maybe a little nerve-wracking, but that adrenaline gets absorbed into the body when the stress is over. So what happens when you have chronic or toxic stress is that adrenaline and that dopamine doesn't get absorbed back into the body because you're more in a constant state of stress. So what we find with children and adults is a lot of time, the first symptoms of that are really physical symptoms. It's that pain or tension in your head or neck. They're complaining of chest pain or stomach aches. In younger children, you're going to see them going to the nurse a lot. I have belly aches. I don't feel well. They can't quite identify it. There's probably a lot going on with that young kiddo, whether it's stress, whether it's social anxiety, whether it's problems at home, but there's something that is manifesting around them that they don't know what to do with. And those come out as physical symptoms. Changes in your heart rate or blood pressure. Stress is really, really bad for your blood pressure. It will increase your blood pressure. You'll probably end up on medication. Changes in eating or sleeping routine. So either having sort of a normal routine and then noticeably either sleeping too much or not sleeping enough, eating too much or not eating enough. Just these are noticeable changes in your normal daily rhythm. Difficulty with memory. I know during COVID, we started seeing a lot of just sort of memory lapses, and nothing major, nothing, clinically concerning. But the stress kiddos were feeling was so significant that they just couldn't remember some basic things. And then also those feelings of that really extreme anger, those outbursts, or restlessness. And that's really your body not managing that stress well. So one of the things that is very unfortunate is stress is unavoidable. We just have to accept that. We are not going to go through life and never have a stressful day. It is all around us. We are going to feel it. So what does that mean? So kids want to feel better because stress doesn't feel good. So they're going to do one of a couple of things. They're going to have, they're going to use coping skills, and coping skills we tend to think of as very positive. All the good things that we do to manage our stress, to manage our anxiety, that's only part of it. So there are actually negative coping skills. They're not the healthiest. So it's things like alcohol use, substance use, fighting, skipping school, running away, isolating themselves, teenagers having sex. These are still things that are going to make them very, very temporarily feel better, but in the long run are going to have a much more negative consequence when they start engaging in these negative coping skills. So what we really want to do is help them with what the positive coping skills are. And these can be anything from exercise. You do need to just be careful with exercise that kids aren't overdoing it. You know, we sometimes forget not all our kids are going to be Division I athletes. That is perfectly fine. Not all our kids are going to go to college. That is perfectly fine. We don't want to put so much pressure on them that those goals are so unattainable for them. It really is. I mean, I say this all the time. I'm a licensed clinician. I have a master's degree. My plumber makes more than I do. He didn't go to college. He went to a trade school. He owns his own business. I don't own my own business. You know, we need to make sure that we are not pigeonholing kids into something that they don't either want to do, they have no interest in doing, but they have an interest in something else that makes them happy, that gives that sense of meaning and purpose. And your kids will tell you pretty quickly kind of what their path is. Whatever it is, we're there to help guide them through it. So we're also there to help them reframe the stress, helping them figure out what they can learn from this. When they make mistakes, what are they learning? Having strong roots, so you know who to turn to. There's a great slide we do in one of these for adults. It's a bare tree with very, very deep roots. And in the training for the adults, we talk about what their roots are, what are those supports in their life. And it's phenomenal to me how many they just start naming one after another. And in kids, they struggle with this a little bit more. It's like, well, you know, my parents are super awesome, and then I have two friends, and then it's these long silences. The other piece to that is there's a idea of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is that idea of, you know, everything is sort of predestined. I don't really have choices. Things are going to work out the way they work out. A growth mindset is really looking for challenges, what I learned from those, what my experiences is, how can I constantly improve? You're really internalizing sort of what's going on around you and what you can take and learn from that. So there's a gentleman in Philadelphia. His name is Dr. Ken Ginsberg. These are not my questions. These are his. He does a series of resilience trainings, and I've been to several of his. He's written several books. He sort of broke this down into three very simple, fundamental questions that adolescents want to know. Who am I? Do I fit in? And am I normal? Those are like the three basic questions of teenagers. We want to fit in. We don't necessarily want to stand out. We're trying to identify who we are, and is who we are normal? And this is, if you want more information, this is his website on here. It's fosteringresilience.com. And he's done some incredible work. He's actually coming to Maryland again in May. I think it's May. Okay. So this is actually also from Dr. Ginsburg. Just sort of things to consider as you are going through wondering as a parent what I should be doing. I don't want to tell you what you should be doing, you as parents or grandparents or caregivers. You sort of define that path, you create that path with the teenager. But there's things to sort of just questions to consider. Do I help them understand the difference between a real crisis and something that feels like an emergency? So actually, in one of his books, he talks about the paper tiger, the real tiger versus a paper tiger. So for teenagers, everything feels like life and death. Everything feels like if this doesn't if this doesn't happen right now, horrible things are going to happen to me. And we know that's not often the case. So helping young people figure out what is an actual crisis and what is something that feels very uncomfortable. Sometimes sitting with that discomfort is actually a very good thing. You know you have the support around you, and just sort of sitting with it for a little bit can actually help make it go away. Do I, as the parent or caregiver, model positive coping strategies on a consistent basis? So one of our favorite resilience trainings to do is actually with teenagers. And we ask two questions. How do they think their parents handle stress? And they come up with lovely, lovely, creative, oh, my mom reads, my dad goes for a run. And then you ask them what they really think, how their parents are dealing with stress, and you get completely different answers. So what we think our kids aren't seeing, they are seeing. Every day we feel stressed out, things don't go the way we expected. Our kids are seeing how we react to that. We may say we're reacting one way, but how our behavior is exhibited is different. What they're seeing is that behavior. Do I believe that telling him to just stop the negative behaviors will do any good? It doesn't. It doesn't. When you're lecturing to a teenager, they're not listening. They've tuned you out. You're not telling them what they think they should be hearing or what they think you should be saying. So we have to find some other creative ways to help them understand what some of those consequences are of those negative behaviors. And remember, those negative behaviors are sometimes coping skills that individuals are using because they don't have positive coping skills. They're using their negative coping skills. Do I recognize that for many young people, risk behaviors are an attempt to alleviate stress and pain? So this one's kind of important. We have, when we have young people, particularly engaging in cutting behaviors, those are very concerning, obviously. Suicide attempts, suicidal ideation, very, very concerning, and we do need to address those immediately. But there are some other risky behaviors, starting to use alcohol, starting to use substances, running away, hanging out with a crowd that they hadn't really hung out with before. That is their way of dealing with whatever is going on in their life, whatever the pain they're feeling or the stress that they're feeling. Do I create a family environment in which talking, listening, and sharing is safe, comfortable, and productive? This is kind of a tough one because this can be inconsistent. Sometimes as parents, we do get stressed out and we do get frustrated with our kids, and we do sometimes maybe raise our voices at them because we want to just immediately grab their attention so we can have that conversation with them. But making sure that on your day-to-day family life, there are those conversations. It is a give and take. There is listening and there is receiving information. And then as I struggle to compose myself so I can make fair, wise decisions under pressure, do I model how I take control rather than respond impulsively or rashly to stressful situations? Again, kids are seeing what you're doing all the time. It's not necessarily what you're saying. So when you make those rash decisions, when you're stressed, when you're feeling like you're under pressure, they're seeing it. Now, nobody is expecting a parent to be perfect. Lord knows we're not. Always cut yourself some slack. We're going to have bad days. We're going to make mistakes, but it's okay to say, you know what, I really didn't make the best decision here. And here's, if I had really thought about it, here's what I could have done differently. So sometimes just processing those decision-making strategies with young people, with teenagers, they can understand that even though you made a rash decision, you can reflect back on that and you can think about, I could have done this differently. I could have handled it differently. It teaches them that even if they do something, there is another option. There are alternatives. You can't always undo things, but you can have those conversations with how did I get here? What can I learn from it? And how can I change? And that's ultimately what resilience is, that ability to adapt and change. Okay. So developing secure and sustained relationships, conversations, not lectures. Teenagers don't respond well to lecturing. They just, it's like the Charlie Brown, all they hear is wah, 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 wah. Think about how that message is actually delivered. Is it in a calm tone? Is it informational? Are you giving information and are you receiving information? Are you allowing your teenager to share their feelings about it? Reframe and define the stress. We talked about the paper tiger versus real tiger. What's a perceived threat and what is a real threat? And this is, in friendship circles, this is very, very difficult. And I do think social media makes this harder. You think you're, best friends with someone, and then you see them posting pictures with other people on social media and you weren't invited. Is that a real threat or a perceived threat? It's a perceived threat, but for the teenager, it feels like a real threat. Knowing that bad things are temporary, that's a very difficult concept for teenagers to understand, because it feels so permanent. The pain they feel, the discomfort they feel, it feels like it will never end. And then knowing that good things are permanent. When good things happen to you, those are things that can be repeated throughout your life. So what you're learning from that is, these are the choices I made that led to this good decision. When I continue to make these good choices, other good things will happen. Helping kids understand what parts they control and what parts they don't control. Sometimes teenagers feel like they control everything. In some cases, they are a little more controlling than we would like to give them credit for. But in some ways, you want them to feel like they do have a sense of control. It's when they start to feel out of control that we start to see some negative behaviors. When they feel like they're in control of who they are, their thought process, their decisions, those are good things. But ultimately, you are the parent. You are the one who's going to have the final say. But the way that you're doing it is that conversation that you're having, not that lecture. You're listening. You are reflecting back to them, making sure that you are understanding what they are telling you. And then finally, leveraging the existing strengths to address the challenges. All kids have strengths. Regardless of who you are, where you come from, what your socioeconomic status is, all kids have strengths. Sometimes we have to dust them off and find them. but how we use those strengths and how we build those strengths on top of each other, like little building blocks, those are the resilience skills that kids are going to take throughout their transition age youth years, their young adult years, their middle age years, into their older adult years. They will build on those strengths, and those are the resilience factors that will help them adapt as they experience challenges in their later life. Where we know stress is inevitable, we are going to feel it, we can't avoid it, but how we deal with it, what do we have internally, what do we have externally around us that can help us address those challenges? Okay, so kind of when to worry. So there are a couple of things that we need to worry about when teenagers are experiencing for longer periods of time, more than a couple of weeks. Irritability that is not consistent with previous patterns of behavior. Being mentally and physically tired all the time for extended periods of time. Very easily agitated over a period of time. That decreased motivation. This is not senioritis. This is not kids who are, they're kind of checked out their senior year because they're moving on to other things. This is kids who are really struggling with any kind of motivation. Increased frustration, increased cynicism, starting to complain of headaches. In little kids, we will see headaches and tummy aches a lot. Decreased interest in things that they once really enjoyed. So when you start to see these and they're starting to pile on top of each other, I tell parents, you know your kids better than anyone else. If you have that gut instinct that something is wrong, it's time to ask for some help. One of the first places most parents go is pediatrician. Pediatricians can help make those referrals. Pediatricians can help talk to you about normal development. Pediatricians can, they will talk to your child about what's going on. Not every child is super comfortable talking to the parents. A lot of kids around here go to the same pediatrician their entire lives. So they do develop those relationships. Okay. So where to turn for help? As I stated before, we operate our crisis response system. We are 24/7. We're a warm line, not a hotline. You don't have to be in crisis to call us. About 60% of our calls are actually for community resources, not for actual intervention. So sometimes we'll have kids calling us ourselves saying, hey, this is kind of what's going on. They share their story. I'm interested in what I may be able to access, whether it's treatment. Sometimes they just need to know how to talk to their parents or talk to their friends. We do have mobile crisis teams. These are also 24/7, 365. And this is a set of 2 clinicians that will actually come out to wherever kids are. We do respond quite a bit to schools for kids in psychiatric crisis. We also respond a lot to homes where parents are calling with a kid who is in an acute crisis. We also have crisis intervention. Crisis intervention is a team made up of 1 Anne Arundel County police officer and 1 clinician. This is predominantly, we do have several kids that we work with. With our CIT team, they actually sort of carry a caseload. They follow them longer than mobile. Mobile will have the initial crisis visit and then they'll get them connected. Crisis intervention is really dealing with more severe cases that need more clinical intervention over a longer period of time. Crisis care coordination. We have a homeless population in both Annapolis City and Anne Arundel County that our care coordination workers work predominantly with, helping with housing, helping with entitlements, making sure that they're seeing a doctor. We do provide transportation if they're not able to access transportation. We have, urgent care appointment access. I don't know if you know this or not, Arundel Lodge has a behavioral health urgent care center. It's Monday through Saturday, and it's in the Sajak Pavilion on the 4th floor. So if you go up to top level of the parking garage, walk in, take your first right, the first door on the right. And those are literally, it's like urgent care for physical health, but it's urgent care for behavioral health. We have transportation specialists, we have hospital diversion. Our hospital diversion, when individuals are emergency petitioned to a hospital, either by the police or by a clinician or by the courts, we can actually follow up and connect those individuals to ongoing services. Jail diversion is a program we have that works out of both Ordnance Road and Jennifer Road. We have access to our own DSS worker who provides a ton of assistance for us getting people's entitlements turned on. And then safe stations. I'm not sure if you are aware, anyone experiencing any sort of addiction can walk into any police or fire station anywhere in Annapolis City or Anne Arundel County and say, I am experiencing an addiction and I want help. We will come out, we'll assess, and we'll get them into treatment either same day or next day. What's nice about safe stations, there is a fire department in almost every community, whether it's a volunteer fire department or a county fire department or Annapolis City Fire Department. Fire departments tend to be less threatening than maybe walking into a police station. So we find that when folks come in, they're a little scared, but it's a very non-threatening environment, and knowing that people are coming out to assess and get you connected to treatment is a kind of a nice feeling for them. So where else to find help? These are some of the local resources. Our agency is on here. Crisis response is a different number than our main office. The health department has adolescent and family services. Anne Arundel County Public Schools has social and emotional supports. The school also has a student safety hotline. There is also a crisis text line. July 16th, our National Suicide and Crisis Line rolled out, 988. We coordinate a lot with 988. We actually get calls transferred to us for linkages to resources. Network of Care. Anne Arundel County has its own site on Network of Care. It's a web-based resource directory for behavioral health services. If you want it, it's there. National Alliance on Mental Illness. There is a chapter in Anne Arundel County run by Fred Delp. He is lovely. Mind Resilience. So I'm a trainer for the state's Mind Resilience. This is a website that we created. It looks at all of the core concepts at all the different ages, 0 to 5, 6 to 12. We go all the way up to, I think it's like 99. After that, forget it. You can't be resilient anymore. You're perfect. Fostering Resilience is Ken Ginsberg's website. And then the Urgent Care Behavioral Health, that is Arundel Lodge's urgent care. And that, is going to open us up to questions.